Hello, Angela. How are you?
I'm here.
Angela is very verbose today. Helen Newman, how are you? Let's ask her to unmute. Helen usually comes at the last 20 minutes of the group, but here she is early, which is unusual for us, actually. Helen, can you hear me? Oh, sorry, Dana. Okay. Helen is busy making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Harvey, how are you doing?
Very well. I'm up here in Swampscott, Massachusetts now. I'll be staying here till after Passover and then heading down to New York for 3 days and then down to Philly for the rest of my time up here.
Well, when will you be in New York?
The 16th through, no, the 14th through the 16th.
Do you recall what days those are?
The 14th should be a Monday.
Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me know when you're in. Maybe I can meet you somewhere.
Yeah, that's a possibility, sure.
Okay. 1 minute left, Chris.
Okay.
We average, Chris, about 10 folks. Sometimes we get up to 20 folks. And today we're just shy of 10. And
However many arrive is totally fine.
And don't worry, Chris, because we have this video and that will go out as well. And everyone will be getting the opportunity to hear your talk.
Right.
And also, and then I'll email your website. And can I share your email as well?
Yep.
Okay. And yeah. All right. Well, it's 11:35. So without further ado, let me open up a screenshot of what I will be reading from. Anticipation.
I keep getting bumped out.
That's a bummer, Angela. Oh, you're all so patient. I love it. This is what we need. Hello and welcome to a very special Saturday spirituality group with our guest, Chris Harrison. Chris Harrison is a spiritual seeker and author whose life transformed at the age of 54 when his kundalini spontaneously activated, unveiling profound insights into the oneness of all things and the evolving shift in human consciousness. Inspired by this awakening and guided by the wisdom of the Council of Tomar, he penned Three Purposes of the Soul, which is all available on his website, which you'll get later. A concise yet powerful 15-page letter to humanity. This work serves as a reminder that each individual is a divine piece of the whole, here for a unique purpose, and that the answers we seek lie within us, waiting to be accessed. Through his writing, Chris shares a message of hope, unity, and the coming of a magical transformation for all. Welcome, Chris Harrison.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate being invited to come and share my things that have been happening to me. I'll give you a little bit of a background in sort of my spiritual. I'll give you sort of the spiritual journey in a rough way, sort of leading up to the Kundalini activation, and then how that drastically changed my understanding of reality, you know, who and what we are and why we incarnate. Um, I was not a spiritual seeker for most of my life. I grew up in it was a religious household, but it wasn't extremely religious. It was uh, United Church, you know, sort of a progressive liberal congregation of, you know, Protestant. And I never, religion for me, I had sort of an intense, um, I didn't want anything to do with religion. And I didn't know how to explain that any better when I was a kid. It didn't make any sense why it was needed, because I always knew that inside me, I had all the answers I needed. I knew that I had a true compass about what was good and evil, and, you know, and I've always been wired as an extremely compassionate person, a very empathetic person. And so, you know, I essentially rejected, you know, religion. You know, when I was 16, my parents wanted me to get confirmed in the church, and I said no, I didn't want anything to do with that, and went on my merry way. And so it wasn't until, so I went, you know, in my 20s and early 30s, really no spiritual life to speak of. I was very much focused on, you know, the outer world and success, you know, in whatever forms I could, you know, was looking for it. Uh, and and also at the same time during this, where I'm, you know, building my career and doing that, and essentially, you know, in survival mode, if you will, right? Where my all of my energy is to, you know, paying the rent, to, you know, get the thing, to buy the stuff, to all of that. Uh, and and concurrently with that, I was also drinking excessively. Um, I would I was drinking about a 26er of gin or vodka every day, which eventually, I mean, I very nearly drank myself to death by the time I was 35. I was vomiting blood and all kinds of stuff. And, you know, I reached this bottom where, um, and it was very frightening to me. I didn't want to drink. I desperately didn't want to drink, and yet I couldn't stop myself. You know, I was at a point, I'd wake up in the morning and I'd vomit blood, pool of blood. And I know that that's directly a direct result of the use and abuse of alcohol. And yet the first thing I would do would be to drink a shot of gin, because that would make me feel better. And so that landed me in AA. And AA was I was 35, and that was sort of where it cracked the door open to spiritual growth. And I had an aversion even to the word God. I was uncomfortable being in groups where people would talk about God. And you know, but because I was in the state I was because of my alcoholism, you know, I became open to that, and just, you know, and so I started, you know, sharing my story, and I started, you know, working the 12 steps the best I could, and doing some spiritual practices. Um, I I did an enormous amount of service work. I've always been, like I said, a very compassionate person and stuff. So I was always service to others oriented. And the AA stuff did that, you know, filled that hole for me very, very well. But even as I'm, you know, as my spiritual life is sort of opening up in that way, I'm still I'm still not really turning inward in the sense of trying to understand, like, who am I? What am I? Why am I on this planet? You know, like it was all the initial spiritual stuff was very surface, if you will. And and so my life carried on for, you know, 15, it was almost 15 or 20 years after going into AA where my kundalini activated. And at that point, I had had immense upheaval in my life, sort of shortly before the Kundalini activated. My life had become um, rather complicated. For many years, I was My girlfriend was extremely ill with a combination of mental illness and physical illness, severe trauma, which manifested as, depending on the psychiatrist you asked, bipolar or schizophrenic, or bipolar with schizophrenic tendencies, or borderline personality disorder, or and I essentially became her caregiver for about a decade, while I was also juggling my career. And in a sort of short period of time, I lost my job. Kimberly died. The pandemic hit, and then my kundalini activated. And when it activated, so if anybody hasn't heard of what kundalini is, it's an energy that sits dormant at the base of your spine, and it is in everyone. Anyone has the potential to activate it, but it also has to be done with intention. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. So I found myself one day, I was sitting in contemplation. I wasn't even meditating, but I was contemplating the concept that we incarnate here for a reason, that we, that I'm here for a purpose. And so I kind of thought to myself, well, if I'm here for a purpose, instead of chasing after things, what if I just sort of let those things come to me? And kind of like an acceptance of what is, and a sort of going with the flow of the universe kind of thought. And so, again, sitting in contemplation, I spontaneously said out loud, and this sounds a little goofy, but I said, I request a most benevolent outcome for surrendering to the waves of the cosmic ocean. Thank you. And instantaneously, I got an answer inside my body. The initial manifestation of it was, the feeling when, if you've had sort of clogged sinuses and they suddenly open up, and that feeling, but throughout my body, it was like my whole body took a breath. And then I felt this rising within me. And if you imagine a glass of water filling itself up, that's what it felt like, starting at the base of my spine. It was like I was literally being filled. It was rising up my torso. I could feel it going through my body. And somehow I knew that this was my kundalini activating. Somewhere along the way, I had read about it, and so in the back of my mind, it's like, oh, I know what this is. And so I wasn't frightened. It was very sort of odd. And so I just sort of sat there, just let it occur. And as it went up, and it was fairly slow, it was like it was dislodging, stale energies from my, cells and things, and dislodging emotion. And so as it passed my heart, and it started passing my throat, and at that point, I just had an immense emotional release, where I just started, weeping for joy, just the beauty of how this felt, and I was, of course, having simultaneous sort of realizations, right? Like, I just confirmed for myself that I have guides, and they are listening, and because of the, immediate, answer. I had, I had an understanding about the shift in consciousness on the planet that I'll talk further about, but and so this was also a confirmation that, like, oh yeah, this stuff is actually happening. These changes are occurring, and the physical form of the human is changing. It's very slow, but these changes are occurring. Anyway, so it had this incredible emotional release of just, again, weeping tears of joy, and that transitioned into a giggle fest, right? I'm weeping, and all of a sudden I find myself just giggling with joy. I mean, it's just pouring out of me, and this, lasts, again, I don't know how long, a few minutes or something, and it sort of settles down, and I think, okay, well, I guess maybe it's finished now. And then there was deep belly laughter started building in my belly. But I'm just sitting there. There's nothing funny. There's nothing going on that's going to trigger this. And so it was weird, right? And it was so weird. I actually kind of started resisting it. I'm not gonna laugh. I'm kind of clenching my jaw. And in in just a brief moment, as I was doing that, there was a moment where I detached from my body just for a brief instant, and in that instant, all of my muscles relaxed and the laughter poured out, and I laughed until I cried, and I was in a blissful state for a couple of weeks after that. That event awakened or awakened my awareness of my chakra system, right? The crown chakra was, totally lit up. My third eye was, doing all kinds of stuff. I was aware of, the energy centers in the body. Um, and and so, like I said, so for about 2 weeks, I'm in this sort of wonderful, blissful state of, and a lot of knowings too at that point already of, sort of uh, the magical time that we live in on this earth. We are living at the most incredible time on the planet. There's this immense shift in consciousness that is happening, that although things do not look good right now, it is actually clearing the way for, a 1,000-year period of no war, that will happen, that most of us will see, in our lifetimes, the beginnings of these things. So after the event itself, once the kundalini is activated, it has a mind of its own. Like, literally, it is like a caretaker keeper of the body. And so I experienced rewiring within my body. I experienced pathways opening up in my system. And I'll describe some of these, and some of them will sound very weird. The first one that happened, I was just falling asleep. I was in the state between sleeping and awake. And suddenly, going in the top of my head, directly down, it felt like a ticklish electric needle going right halfway down into my brain. And it was crazy ticklish. It was, and I wasn't frightened. Like, I knew it wasn't something bad. I mean, I knew that my brain was being rewired, that there was rewiring happening in my brain. And it lasted for a few minutes. I don't know, 5-10 minutes or something. I mean, I couldn't fall asleep until it finished. It was so distracting. I didn't know what to think of it, And 2 weeks after that, falling asleep, same thing, only this time it's not going in the top of my head. It's going in a 45-degree angle just above my third eye. A couple weeks after that, similar thing in the temples. I have had like other activations inside my brain where, the base of my brain, if you imagine, it felt like what a sparkler looks like. There's this, like, when it would activate, it would just be this crazy sort of sparkling. I have experienced, and again, these things would sort of be spread out like every couple of weeks. Something would sort of occur like this. One of the weirder ones was the sensation of a perfect cylinder going through my body, where my heart is, and a cool breeze blowing on my heart. Just, metaphysically odd. I've had episodes where my third eye vibrated with such intensity that I could literally feel it felt like a three-dimensional gemstone embedded in my forehead. And one of the most incredible things which continues to happen is a sensation of, and this would happen in a meditative state, the sensation of a soft, cool, thick liquid that would pour into my crown. And it would feel like it's dripping down my head, coating my head. And the times where it was really, really, really flowing, it would feel like it would not only coat my head, but it would drip as if from the back of my head onto the top of my spine and then drip down my body. And I'd be sitting in meditating when this would be occurring, and it would feel like there's like I'd be sitting still, and it would feel like there's almost like a membrane kind of around my whole body. And so as I would move, it would feel like that sort of membrane is sort of cracking away. And while that was happening, there was in the middle of my back, about the size of maybe about half the size of a golf ball. My middle back was just vibrating like crazy. And it was the sensation of, it felt like I had wings coming out of my body, and it felt like I was pulling myself out of a cocoon, metaphysically. And so these things sort of, continued going on. And like I said before, this was a confirmation for me of, I had heard shortly before this stuff happened, I had been, reading about this shift in consciousness that I am describing. There has been a lot written about it. A woman named Dolores Cannon has written multiple books about this, based on past life regressions that she had done. And as part of this shift in consciousness that everyone is experiencing, is also our physical form changes. We are activating dormant DNA, and science tells us that we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. We actually have 24, and the 24th pair is in another dimension. And so, as all this stuff is occurring within me, I know that is because the DNA my DNA is activating, and different aspects of me are awakening. I actually did a guided meditation to activate my 24th pair of chromosomes. And during the meditation, as I was visualizing, so I was activating the DNA, and then I was activating the gifts I held within the DNA. And so as I was visualizing, taking this, item off of a shelf and sort of bringing it inside myself, it was like a fountain of light poured over my crown. Just my eyes were closed. All I saw was sparkles, as it just felt like hundreds of little sort of buds of light, were popping up. And anyway, so I had this sort of confirmation that the shift in consciousness is genuine and actually going on. And my understanding of it now, and this is partly knowings I have since these experiences. It's partly through reading people like Dolores Cannon. It's partly through various channels. And I also had like a very deep understanding of the oneness of all things. For the first time, I really knew that everything is conscious, and that consciousness is the consciousness of a single being. And the separateness that we experience here is an illusion. That we are actually all pieces of one being, and we are essentially our reality is a holographic dream. It is a projection of consciousness, and all of us are collectively, the planet and everything, we are all rising in vibration. The rising in vibration is cyclical. It is tied to the 26,000 year wobble of the Earth's axis, and where the Earth is, the wobble of the Earth's axis, where the Earth is in our solar system, where our solar system is in relation to our to the galaxy, where the planet is in relation to the center of the galaxy. And so we're going through this where everything is rising in vibration, and as we rise in vibration, there's a polarization that happens. That we become more and more polarized, specifically between. I mean, the polarization happens in multiple ways, but you can look at it in terms of service to self or service to others. And as we rise in vibration, the ones who we're rising from one octave to another octave, and in order to make that shift, you have to be aligned in service to others in order to do that. There are a few people that will be able to shift on the service to self path, because of course everyone, we're all part of the divine. Each one of us is literally a piece of God, and so even the people that appear negative and are behaving in negative ways are still a part of us. But in the shift in consciousness, the ones who are aligned in service to others, you have to be 51% aligned in service to others to ultimately make the shift. Ones who are aligned in service to self have to be 95% aligned in service to self in order to make the shift. And so I with that understanding of sort of what is being able, a new way to sort of new perspective of what was going on the planet, because also as we rise in vibration, as the light on the planet increases, corruption becomes more and more visible. It's much harder to keep secrets. Things become more and more transparent. And this is all of these things, it's all the karma. We're at the end of a cycle. So all of this karma is coming up to be cleared, individually and collectively. And so it's excuse me. And the stuff is coming up to be addressed so that it can be, things can't be fixed, unless they are understood and seen. And so, as we rise in vibration, part of it is rising out of lower vibrations and letting go of things that no longer resonate. The reality we live in is essentially a 360-degree hall of mirrors, if you will, in that what you cultivate in your inner self is reflected back to you from reality. And so if you are peaceful, if you cultivate peace and calm and serenity within yourself, your external world will become peaceful and calm and serene. And just as if you are imbalanced, then you will reflect back imbalance. And not only is it a hall of mirrors in the sense that it's reflecting back to you, but the so-called law of attraction, is also true, right? And so you also attract to you those things that are that match your vibration. And so, as my own sort of change happened, like, I've described like the physical things and all that kind of stuff. The my state of mind and perceptions of the world also changed, but not necessarily overnight, like super fast, but just over time, I would realize that I would make, patterns in my life, I would make different choices because I would see them differently. And it's it's actually one of the ways that I could tell the progress that I was making sort of spiritually and my own inner state. When something would happen in my life that was a sort of something that would have triggered me, let's say a few years ago, happening now, it's like, oh, it doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't bother me at all because I've let go of things, I've processed things and let go of stuff that I'm not carrying around with me. So I'm kind of losing track of my
Can I
So-
ask you a question, Chris?
Oh, absolutely.
Or are you not? Would you like to carry on first?
Oh, no, ask a question by all means.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. And I know you're not finished, so I'd love to hear what you have to say. But my favorite thing about this curious pursuit of a spiritual journey is this idea that it's like there's this house, right? And you've got a million different ways of getting into the house. There's the kitchen window and the entrance door and the bathroom window on the first floor and the chimney. And everyone is trying to find an entry point to get into the house. We are the house eventually, and we end up realizing that later. But so I just find it absolutely fascinating to hear a personal story and the universality in this personal story and how you approach this awakening that you experienced. And when you were talking about this pins and needle sensation in your brain, it reminded me of the work that people do to activate the pineal gland, this little grain of rice and the calcite crystals surrounding it and the electricity factor that is sort of like being triggered in terms of breathing techniques. So, and it secretes DMT, the pineal gland. So when you were thinking, we're talking about a leaking thing, I mean, it's everything is sort of like being mirrored and verbalized in different ways, but it tells the same story and it shines the same light. And so what I'm always quite curious about when someone wakes up from the illusion is, all right, we've been sent here, separated in time and space, incarnated in a body, so that consciousness can observe itself through separation in its illusion, and experience itself through the separation of bodies and matter. So how do you go about infusing doing with this strong stillness of being? How do you go about, I mean, we're called human beings for a reason. We're humans and we're beings. So how do you infuse the being into the human? How do you take the underground and eat a sandwich and interact with people? And how do you live a life incarnated fully, I guess, is my question.
Oh, it's a great question. Yeah, it's because the perspective I had just changed overnight, really. And I make I consider everybody else on the planet an other self, right? And so I try to maintain, if this is a dream that we're all in, I want to be in a lucid state within the dream. And so, but of course, we are so mesmerized by our senses, we're so mesmerized by the outer things on our world that it is very hard, even consciously. I will go for first thing in the morning and I'll say I'm going to maintain that state of mind, throughout the day. But then you get distracted by other stuff because stuff happens, and all of a sudden you realize, oh wow, I've been caught up in this illusion, all day. And it's, until people, like I had to get out of survival mode in order to really have the time to dedicate to the sort of inner work that I've been able to do. And so like, it's no surprise to me that I didn't have these realizations earlier in my life because I was so all consumed with the outer world. And I should also talk too, like after the Kundalini happened, and I wanted to understand more of it, I started having Akashic readings done. And if anyone doesn't know that term, your Akashic record is the record of all of your soul's experiences on this planet and off this planet. And it is stored in a quantum way in your DNA. And it is, anyone can access their own Akash, although it is extraordinarily difficult. It is highly, highly guarded. But there are also people who have that ability, and you can give one of them a permission to enter your own Akashic record, and essentially that person acts as a go-between, to ask questions of your guides and that kind of thing. And so I worked with a woman named Krista Rauschenberg, who is genuinely extraordinarily gifted. And she filled in a lot of blanks about, why I'm here and why I am the way I am. One of the most profound things she told me was that she said that my energy was very different than most people, and she said that specifically the shape of my astral body. She said that for most people, if she unzips their human suit, their astral body is in the shape of a human, not mine. She said it's like I'm an ET disguised as a human. And I was like, oh, that answers a lot of questions about my life and why I've always felt so uncomfortable and such. So she told me that piece of information. She said that my guides are a council, and I sit on the council. They call me their boots on the ground. And I was going to say about that. I lost my train of thought with that. Okay, well, I'll come back to that. No, sorry, my brain is shutting off. If anybody else has questions while I'm sitting here trying to get my brain to work again, please feel free to ask.
I love the expression "boots on the ground." That pretty well says it.
Oh, that's the other thing that I was going to say. That yes, I'm their boots on the ground, and this is the fifth time that I've been on an ascending planet, and so like I said, the entire planet is having this shift in consciousness, and we're very specifically shifting from third density consciousness into fourth density consciousness. And fourth density is a state of an awareness of the oneness of all things, in whatever way, you understand that, and, an understanding of, a knowing of the spiritual being that you are. And so there are, the earth went into a very, very, very low vibrational state. And when people incarnate here, when beings incarnate here in whether it's Earth or a similar third density planet, the whole idea is we come in and are veiled. We have the veil of forgetting while we're here. And we incarnate for the purposes of expanding our experiences, growing our soul. We can have these experiences we can have experiences in a veiled state that we can't have in an unveiled state. There's certain things that, in a veiled state, you become very afraid of death. and all of that stuff. And so it all factors in. And so, the Earth had become very the very low in vibration. So entities who were coming in to incarnate, because it was so low, essentially the amount of the connection to source was extremely, extremely dim. And so in that state, beings would come in, and instead of waking up to know what they are, they would be creating more and more negative karma and digging themselves more and more and more into a hole. And so being able to, rather than being able to go up in the other direction. And so there are a huge number of people on the planet who are souls who have already graduated, let's say, have already gone from third density to fourth, or fifth density or sixth, and they have come and incarnated on Earth for the purpose of helping to raise the collective vibration, so that the Earth itself can, make this last shift into the higher state of being, into the higher state of frequency. And there are, like I was saying before, in order to graduate in this, you have to be service to others, 51%, in a mindset of an understanding of the oneness, being guided by kindness and compassion. And the other ones who, the ones who are not in that state, they are not lesser. They're not, we are, each one of us is a piece of the divine. And so they're just on a different place along the pathway. And so even though it looks horrendous right now on the planet, with what's going on, it looks like, if I were to say, oh, we're having a shift in consciousness, most people would think it's going to the negative consciousness, not the positive. But what's actually happening is there's so much light on the planet, it is exposing all of these things, and so that ultimately we can deal with them and change them. And the people who are, the negatively oriented people, the ones, it's like, it's only a small percentage of people that make it miserable for all of us here. And so over a period of 10, 20 years, I don't know exactly how long, those people will essentially die off. They'll die off naturally. If the planet is shifting in vibration, and so if you are not rising in vibration yourself, if you're not doing the inner work to let go of things, to allow yourself to rise, then you will be, out of alignment with the planet, like gears out of alignment. And we're already seeing it. We see people who are out of alignment, more and more clearly. We're seeing people who are service to self, extraordinarily clearly on the planet right now. I mean, how many narcissistic collapses are we witnessing? And so even though it looks awful right now, this is we're giving birth to a new state of humanity, and the birthing process is painful, and so. I don't know how much more I have to say about that, other than I say it to be, hopeful about our future, about what's coming, even though what's here now looks terrible. It's more and more of a reason to use compassion, as your North Star, and to connect with your own inner divinity and your own inner guidance, as we navigate these things. And,
all right. I have a couple of questions, but I'm a mere facilitator, and I encourage others to, like Harvey Newman has his hand raised. Go ahead, Harvey.
So thank you for everything that you're saying, Um, First of all, my first experience with kundalini was in a little book by Itzhak Bentov that was called Stalking the Wild Pendulum. And in the book, he discusses what he calls popping the kundalini. And that I've known about this since about, I'd say about 1979, 1980, when I first read the book, and then started reading some books on what they called cosmic consciousness, and stories of people who have spontaneous popping of their kundalini, if you will. You said a couple of things that really were fascinating to me, but the first question I have for you is, what year did this happen?
The kundalini?
Yeah.
It was almost 4 years ago, about 4 years ago now.
4 years ago, so that would be 2021.
Yeah, it was just after it was during COVID.
So you talked about the Akashic record being in our DNA, and I believe that's probably true. But have you also considered that the Akashic record is the field of our universe and the consciousness of our universe?
Absolutely. And my understanding is your Akashic record are actually stored in a couple of places, right? It's not, it's not just one place. It's within you. There's a copy of it somewhere on the earth in a crystal cave in a dimension that we can't access. And then, yes, I agree with you. It's also, in the field itself.
Thank you.
All right. Now, if anyone feels the spirit moving them to ask a question or provide
Spirit moved me.
Oh, good.
Chris, I like your process. I think I had the same thing done to me, but it scared me. I didn't know what it was. I'm always the last to know these things. But yeah, it just happened, and here I am. Oh, and I have a question for Ameline. Ameline, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah.
Ameline, are you a person that have had some of these experiences, or were you just given the scientific equation for them?
No, I've experienced nothing close to what Chris sort of described, but I think what I would say, and it's unfortunate, isn't it? But maybe our level of consciousness is not there yet. My experience came from profound suffering as well.
Well, most people do. That's how it comes upon them.
Yeah. It's like a compression chamber. There's the inevitability of change. You're on the precipice of something else. There's no return, and that creates an energetic shift of immense magnitude. So yeah. I mean, it's not about me, but I was born and I did not want to open my eyes for 2 weeks. So that'll give you an idea.
No, I can understand by the way you asked the question. I go by the way people ask questions. You can see the understanding they have of it, and you're on the right track. Keep going, because you're into meditation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll get there. It takes time. It's like exercise. You got to keep at it. All right, I finished.
Thank you, Chaplain James.
Thank you.
Anyone else? How about you, Aquapay? You've been patiently listening.
Well, I joined kind of late, and I had like a little bit of, I guess, interception I walked around and did some other things and came back. It's very interesting. Is that was that your question about what our impression of what he's saying? What I can't remember his name. Is it Chris?
Chris,
What he's talking about?
Aquape, whatever's on your mind, Aquape.
Oh yeah, I just find it intriguing. Yeah, and very believable.
Have you had a similar experience?
I would say I've had several experiences most of my life. Yeah.
So this resonates with you.
Yes.
All right. And sometimes these experiences are labeled psychiatric, right?
I would imagine so. Yeah, I wouldn't just normally share these sorts of things with like my doctor or um uh certain therapists without expecting unusual looks and things.
Mhm.
Me neither. Angela Serio, go ahead.
Atypical psychosis was what they called it with me.
Mm.
Angela, you choose very few words without elaboration.
I'll add this, that it's I've spent some time contemplating this about, sort of when my experience happened versus I'm quite certain that the higher version of me kept myself veiled during the period that I was acting as the caregiver for Kimberly. And I know now that I was balancing um, lessons of compassion with wisdom, and so I know that had I been awake during that time, I would have helped her in a much different way. But one of the main things was that because she did have enormous psychiatric, she lived with hallucinations. She never found a medication to get rid of them, and you know I, with my current perspective, I think I might have been more could have given her more comfort in maybe realizing that not all of those are necessarily, her being crazy, but those are, things coming through from her higher self and stuff, just a different, a different perspective of it. And so, I it's funny. I did tell my doctor about my kundalini. I was there for just a regular checkup or whatever, and I kind of said, "Hey, have you heard about this?" And he had no clue. He was not open to it at all. He was convinced that that was just you know my brain making something up. And we definitely live in a world where there's a lot of people that have closed minds to this, and unfortunately, what we believe is what we create, and we get, so it is. I was, hesitant. I would be hesitant to share some of this stuff at times, depending on who it was too, right? So.
Um, what can you tell us, Chris, about your girlfriend in terms of if you can elaborate more in terms of like a higher spirituality, and why are so often psychiatric experiences so damn fraught with fear and panic?
Yeah, yeah. And so I kind of missed the beginning of your question. You kind of cut out, but it's you just wanted to give me sort of more background on about Kimberly and her.
Yes, yes. Like her experiences in terms of more elaboration on it being a transmission of some kind, and also,
Right,
the fear
right,
aspect.
right. So I'll start with another, like, this is like with Kimberly. I was certain that she and I had a soul contract. Even before I had these, I knew that she was put into my life, that the two of us were put together for a very specific reason. We had worked together, had feelings for one another, but our lives didn't align. She got married, she had a child. Her life fell to pieces because of her. She lost her child, lost custody of her child, and was multiple hospitalizations. She had multiple ECTs, electroshock therapy, all that stuff. And I felt this strong connection to her. And I always, especially once I got sober, I thought, I really want to find her and help her. I had no way to find her after we stopped working, she fell off the map. Nobody I knew had any way to reach her. And then one day, I knew that if I went to a particular AA meeting the next day, I knew that she would be there. And it was such a strong, it was like there was no voice or anything like that. It was just this incredibly strong feeling. And I couldn't avoid it. I couldn't ignore it because it was so strong. And I thought, well, I may as well, I'll go to this meeting. What's the harm in doing that? It was a meeting I'd never been to in a part of the city I didn't go to. And so I go with her and I sit down and sit in the circle and I look around and she's not there. And I think, okay, it must be my active imagination or something. And then I looked up at the clock on the wall. It was like 2 minutes to 7. And without a thought, my head swiveled to the back where the door was as she walked through it. And I didn't understand I had a profound premonition of this. But I didn't really understand what it was. At the time, I'm like, did I experience like a glitch in time space? Did I, what? And I know now it was, that was my higher self, the higher me, guiding me to, essentially the contract that the two of us had. And so, all the work that I did with her, it was all done with a very deep sense of, like this is my, she is my purpose. And so, like I said, she was diagnosed as mostly bipolar with schizophrenic tendencies. And so she lived with hallucinations of various kinds. Often, very angry ones, berating her, and stuff. And again, I with my current understandings, and again, I couldn't, I can't say whether this would work for sure. I mean, ultimately, I couldn't fix her. That's one of the things I had to learn the hard way. Was as much as I wanted to try, I couldn't fix her. But that I would have guided her to meditation, and I would have guided her to these principles. That she is much, much, much more than, just the physical body, right? We are the piece of our soul that is in our physical body is a teeny, teeny, tiny bit of our actual soul, right? We are the physical part of us is by far the smallest part of us. We are, the spiritual side of us is vast. We are not these tiny, powerless little beings that we think we are. And I think, again, I can't say for certain, but I think that perspective would have greatly assisted her in feeling better about herself, and maybe instead of trying to push out the things that were happening, to try to understand them better without necessarily, medicating them away. Again, I can't say any of that for certain because that's not the way that things unfolded. At the end of it, and she literally died in my arms. Like she literally, she had at the end she had fallen off her bed, and I helped her back up, and she was totally gone. And she came back, just for an instant, and said, "I love you," and then she was gone.
Wow. That's a profoundly powerful experience that you had together. Harvey Newman, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, Dan, you reminded me of something when you mentioned fear. Just recently, I listened to someone talking about fear using the original acronym that they have. I think it's called false evidence appearing real. But she transformed it into something much more positive and optimistic. And I want to get back to the word optimistic next. But she said, face everything and rise.
That's beautiful.
And you're talking about rising, reminded me of that earlier. And the other thing is, just recently, I heard a concept called divine optimism. And he makes that distinction of putting the word divine in front of optimism, because generally we think of optimism in our physical reality, and that's often dashed on the rocks. But divine optimism is for the soul, and it will always be in the direction of the positive and the optimistic evolution of the soul.
Yes. Yeah, that, I mean, part of the, the shift of my perspective is also the understanding of looking at life in a way where everything that's happening in my life is by design, ultimately by choice, by the pre-incarnate me, but also that it's all happening for my benefit. And so even when things that are negative that happen, to be able to look at them and go, what's the good that comes out of this? Like, what is it? What do I gain because of this experience? And that helped me transform, whole sort of sections of my life when I reframed them. When I would go back and look at something, and I originally would think about it in terms of the negative stuff. Oh, woe is me, this happened and this didn't. I didn't get this, whatever. And then if I reframed it, and it's like, no, I'm just going to look at the good aspects of it, and there always were, and that is incredibly liberating. Because when we carry around the negativity, it just weighs us down. And when we can, we can see the good that comes even from terrible, terrible experiences, it can help us process them and help us let them go. And again, it becomes a life of optimism, not of, oh, I'm being hard done by all these outer things of in my world.
Mm. And I played with these 5 different prepositions, I guess you could say, that describe how we relate to reality. Life is happening to us, by us, for us, through us, or as us. And the last 3 are in the spiritual realm, and the other 2 are the victim state that we find ourselves in so often.
Yes.
Emmeline, are you there, Emmeline?
Yes, I'm here.
Emmeline, I have to run to the little boys' room, and I'd like to take a step back from facilitating. Could you step up?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Chris, if that's okay, I have a question as well regarding your experience with your partner.
Yes.
If it's not too intimate, I would love to know how you essentially rode through the waves and the journey of grief itself, having it being sort of timed in a very curious way with your spiritual awakening. How did one nourish and nurture the other, and how did you deal with grief as a concept, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, that's a good question. In some ways, her passing was a gift, because her health was in such a state of, I was actually at a point where I didn't know what I was going to do, because she was going to have to go into some kind of home, and she would not have reacted well to that. There were just so many complications. And so, you know, on the one hand, again, it sounds kind of terrible, but it was a relief that she passed. Um, and as I said too, I mean, I did, in the time that I was with her, and especially because of the premonition that led me, you know, connected us again, you know, I really believe that that was, you know, that was my purpose. She was my purpose. And so in one sense, you know, again, I felt like, okay, I've, you know, that part of that chapter of my life is finished, you know, and it's had a, you know, as good an ending as I could have imagined, you know, if you will. I never felt like I didn't do enough, you know. I always, you know, and so I never had that feeling. But at the same time, me helping her was a large part of my identity, right? I mean, the people that I worked with knew that, you know, like I was very, you know, quiet, introverted. Most people didn't really know what was going on in my personal life, but the handful that did, you know, knew how much I, you know, sort of took on with that. And so that was a challenging thing of going like all of a sudden, like there is just a whole lot of time to fill, you know, where, you know, and in combination where I had lost my job too, right? So, you know, kind of like everything got wiped clean. Um, and in the first couple of readings, Akashic readings I had, I was also able to connect with her, um, and you know, like, and get, you know, some answers about some things, and also in the within the first year more than now, I could feel her, right? Like I could feel her presence, and I would still, even today, I still will, you know, call out her name to have her come and, you know, and sit next to me while I'm driving through the city or something. Um, so yeah, the biggest thing is that the biggest challenge for me in the grief was really just, you know, adjusting to just a vastly different set of responsibilities, or, you know, not having the responsibilities. Um, I also had she had insisted on getting a dog, which I resisted for, and I love dogs, but I resisted for a long, long time. But one day she had just a complete meltdown, and so I went, fine, I got a dog, and as it turned out, she was the dog. The dog was amazing, Shoshana, who turned out to be the reincarnation of my childhood dog, Shayna, um, and so she was a huge comfort as well. At the end of that, she was a amazing animal who would, if Kim would get up and be, if Kim was in a delusional state and, you know, walking around, that Shoshana would come and alert me. And but anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, absolutely. It's wonderful. It reminds me what you said about the shift in identity. Reminds me what Byron Katie says about, you know, the self-identification with thought, and this mantra almost, who am I without that thought? You're not the carer anymore, so who am I without the thought? And how
yeah.
does that shift the quality and the fabric of your reality? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Chaplain, do you want to talk? Do you want to ask a question?
Yes, Chris. It interests me. You said about twice now you lost your job, but you never said what your job was.
Oh yeah, I worked in the creative department of different advertising agencies. I had an amazing job that I didn't even know this job existed, when until I got to, I went through art school and I still didn't. I literally fell into this job, and it was absolutely fantastic. It was, I couldn't have asked for a better, weirder kind of. I was paid to sit around and come up with goofy ideas for commercials and magazine ads and stuff, and then travel around the world to film them. You know,
Wow.
all on somebody else's dime. You know, and so it was a joyous, you know, joyous job, as jobs go. You know,
Sounds like it.
oh yeah. I mean, I look back and I go, like, I'm not a skier. I'm not a, you know, outdoorsy, you know, kind of thing. And yet the universe brought me to 3 mountaintops around the world. And
Mm.
after my current experience, I go, well, there's must have been a reason why I had to go to, Mount Blanc in France and to the helicopter to Whistler in BC and to another one in New Zealand. That first there was must have been some energetic reason for me to go to those places. And anyway, so that's the sort of kind of job it was. It was
Yeah.
great, but while it lasted.
Okay, yeah. You are like a creative type.
Yes,
Creative types mostly all the time. They're looking for more.
yes, very
Yeah.
very true. Yeah, and I'm also, I'm certain that a lot of the people that I worked with, were soul family in the sense that, we had other lives together, not the first time that we worked together. That was another thing I benefited from Akashic readings, is that I would often ask what my relationship was to certain people in my life, and whether we had lessons that were carrying over, from a previous life to this one, or some sort of soul contract.
What is Akashic readings?
The Akashic readings.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's there are people who have that gift of being able to access the records. And so the woman I worked with, her name is Krista Rauschenberg, and she's very, very gifted. And so essentially, I give her permission to access my records. And then in a state of meditation, she connects. And then once she said, yes, the records are open, then I could ask questions of my guides, ask for things to be, revealed from the records.
Can you do that now?
I can't. Yeah, I mean,
No.
no, I don't have that ability myself to do it. So
Oh.
I practice and try to request entrance, but so far I have not.
Mm.
But it is it's one of those it's a spiritual tool that is, if you're ever curious, I highly recommend it. It is
Yeah.
incredible.
I like to benefit from the experience, and I need to do that. That's my next thing. We have another reason to talk.
Yes, yes. You will discover incredible things about yourself.
Chris, would you mind
Mhm.
putting the name of the person who did your reading so that people can
Oh,
look
yes,
her up and maybe get inspired as well?
yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily.
You're welcome.
I see your website
Oh,
too, Akashic Glow.
oh, what a
Yeah,
beautiful
that's right.
tree. Wonderful. Thank you, Sister V.
Sure. My pleasure.
Yeah, I don't have I don't have her website off the top of my mind, but like you said, you just found it right there. Exactly. That's her.
Akashic Glow,
Yeah.
AKASHIC, and then GLOW.com.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Crystal with a K. KRISTA. I'll put it in the chat.
Does anyone else have a question for Chris?
Thank you, whoever's putting that in the chat.
Chris, if no one else has a question, can I ask you a last one?
Absolutely.
Which might probably benefit everyone here. Do you have any words of wisdom for simply for dealing with the illusion of duality? And what I mean by that is navigating life and being confronted with people who are unconscious, unaware, rooted in fear, anger, low vibration. Have you managed to cultivate well, I don't want to call them techniques, but a way of approaching a specific situation through presence that allows you to sort of remain rooted and not react?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's I mean, I always tell people, just as a general thing that, to use your north, your as your North Star to be compassion. and to see everyone through, compassionate, empathetic eyes, and remember that, even those who are in, low vibrational state, unawake, whatever, that is purely because of their programming, right? We get programmed with, when we incarnate through our parents, our church, our school, our, all of these things, right? Creates who we believe ourselves to be. And so, when people are in a state where they don't understand that, um, it's, I mean, I'm very, it's not, it's also not for me to try to convince them otherwise, right? Because, whether they believe that stuff or not is not up to me. It's up to them and where they're at with their path. But for me, again, I just sort of, I use compassion as the North Star, and I keep a deep remembrance that, we are all one. Like that essentially that person in this angry state, is a different version of me, in that body. And when people are, in those states where they're angry or fearful or whatever, it is they're unwell, right? Like you can when people are acting out and doing terrible things, it's because they are hurting inside, right? And the solution to all of it is always love, right? It's somewhere along the way there's a lack of love that has caused that, and it's, presence, like keeping that state of presence, but also there are things that are more powerful than we realize in terms of just in sending, call it the power of prayer, but I call it, compassionate action, where, from within you visualize and send love to those people, and again, that's not necessarily going to instantly turn someone from a, angry, raving person to, suddenly docile. But just as a way to kind of go for myself to remember to, again, not to add to that energy that they're putting out, right? To try to hold, peaceful energy, while dealing with them. I don't know if that answers the questions, but.
Chris, let me help you out here a little bit. Ameline,
Yes.
it's like exercise. You do the more you do it, the better you'll be at it. And you see all the resistance coming at you, and you better to handle it. You see what I'm saying? The longer you do this, the more into it you become, and the more you can let stuff like that fly off your back like a duck.
Yes, exactly. And also remembering too that, there's a spiritual principle I didn't even know about until 4 or 5 years ago, of, not taking anything personally, right? That when somebody says something, it is a reflection of that person, not a reflection of me. So somebody could say, Chris, you're the most incredible person in the world, or they could say, you're the, worst, most evil person. And neither one of them has anything to do with me. It's only how they're perceiving it. And so, that there's a phrase I learned in AA of, what other people think of me is none of my business. And so again, as a way to just sort of let things, not stick, let them wash over, and but that can be challenging, especially in today's world where there's a lot of contrast, there's a lot of
Many idiots.
Yes. Yes. It's
Hello, everyone. This is Dan Prey here. I am back from the little boys' room, and I'm very eager to watch the video to see what I missed. But at this point in our conversation, I would just like to do something. Now, Emily, this is called the check-in, just to see how everyone is feeling in the moment right now. And we'll start with Stacy. Honey, are you there? How are you feeling right now? How are you feeling right now in this moment?
I'm feeling good. I just got in, so I wasn't able to hear everything, but the little that I did hear, it sounds very helpful in writing down like the links and stuff that Sister V sent. So yeah, I'm feeling great.
Yeah, save the chat and you will get a copy of the video.
Thank you so
Evelyn
much.
Graham, how are you doing, Evelyn?
I'm doing well. I'm babysitting.
How are you feeling right at this moment?
I feel great, blessed. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, very good. And we'll have a video for the stuff that you missed.
Okay. Thank you.
Frank Q, how are you doing right at this moment?
I'm fine, thanks.
Frank, is this the only 2 words you've spoken in this whole group?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you said yeah. Well, all right, then that's 3. And that's the Holy Trinity, you guys. Angela Serio, how are you feeling right at this moment?
Well, I'm very glad I was here this morning. I really enjoyed the group today. I have a lot of stress going on in my life this week. So I kind of really needed some backup for my own spiritual beliefs. So thank you very much.
Now, Emmeline, would you like to carry on with the rest of the remaining folks?
Who do we have? Sister V, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really happy that I decided to check in and that it was still going on. I really want to look into this resource that Brother Chris spoke of, akashicglow.com, Krista Rauschenberg, and she has a podcast as well on her website. So I'm very excited. I'll probably play that today. She has
What day is
multiple.
the webcast?
What's that?
What day is webcast thing?
Oh, I don't know. I just noticed that she has a podcast, and
Oh, okay.
she has multiple podcast recordings on her site. Like when you go up in the upper right hand corner, the little slashes, and you click on it, and it says home podcast and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I'm excited to see like
All right.
around how much she charged. So basically, I'm just excited, and I'm like very happy to be here to make it
Well, I
short.
thank you for that, Sister V.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
pleasure.
Chaplain, how are you? How are you feeling?
Oh, I'm doing great. I got so much information today. Chris, I agree. I agree with your theory. It happened. That's what happened to me, but in a little different way. I didn't know what the hell was going on. It just all of a sudden just began. Yeah, and yeah, this was a good group. I like this one. I like this one. I give it A+.
Thank you.
We graduated, yay! Helen, how are you? You all right?
I had muted myself. Thank you. I very much appreciate, as much as I cannot be for whatever reason earlier, I did get, half an hour, 40 minutes of everything that I needed to get. And getting it, a lot of inside pain because what I was hearing, I also am going through that. But this is it. I'm not alone, sharing with other wonderful people, and this Chris talk was so enlivening. So everything that I would want to hear. So I'm just very happy and glad to be all part of this wonderful group of people that trying to cope. Thank you so much. And I love your face. You have a beautiful face too, Annalyn. So that helps. That helps.
Thank you.
I never saw you before, but it
No,
helps.
I'm new. I'm new. Thank you so much for
You're
your
new.
kind words.
Okay, very good. Come
Thank
again.
you.
Thank you.
Harvey, you all right?
Oh yeah, I'm really excited about the synchronicities of all of this. I just finished reading what's his name, Laszlo's book, Science and the Akashic Field, and so this all fits together. And I want to say that within the living in the physical world, we have this idea that there's a positive and there's a negative. But the negative is really a way to boot yourself up into the positive, in the same way that what am I thinking of? The oh gosh. Well, the events that happen in our lives are all sending us in one direction, even though it feels like sometimes it's sending us in the opposite.
Yeah. It's all information. And then we have Sada. I don't know if Sada is here.
No, that's me in the living room.
You've got a double screen situation. There we go.
I was going back and forth.
Wonderful. A 360 experience.
Have it on loudspeaker.
Beautiful. If that's okay, can I just read something that I found in my drive? Chaplain inspired me, Chris as well, when we spoke about
as long as it's good.
Well, I mean, I did not write it, but I think it's pretty good, and it inspired me. So let me know what you think. But I think talking about this duality and the interaction with the other and existing on a 3D plane and how to interact with that truth, with presence, I found something written by a Buddhist monk called Thich Nhat Hanh, Mahayana tradition, and it's in his book, Miracle of Mindfulness. And he has this, it's such a simple and yet so profound example. He talks of a table and he says, I'll cut the quote, but he says basically, consider the example of a table. The table's existence is possible due to the existence of things which we might call the non-table world. The forest, where the wood grew and was cut, the carpenter, the iron ore, which became the nails and screws, countless other things which have relations to the table and are non-table, the parents, the ancestors of the carpenter, the sun and the rain, which made it possible for the trees to grow. If you grasp the table's reality, then you see that in the table itself are present all those things which we normally think as non-table world. If you took away any of those non-table elements and returned them to their source, the table would no longer exist. Therefore, a person who looks at the table and can see the whole universe is a person who can see the way. And that made me think of what we just said, to meet each other and the other person on all the different dimensions and levels.
Yes, that is similar to my Bruce Lee. Don't concentrate on the finger. You miss all the heavenly glory.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, all right, you guys, it's 1 o'clock Eastern, and that is the conclusion of our group. But before we go, Chris, do you have any parting words for us?
My only parting word is just that it's always my wish and intention that people discover, are able to connect to their own inner divinity, and discover everybody has built-in divine guidance, and divine guidance that's specific for you, and so I always encourage people to look within. I mean, I think this entire group is already doing that, but also just to remember that each one of us has incarnated again and again and again and again. We are so much more vast than this one lifetime. It's only because we have the veil of forgetting while we're here. But just remembering that, the magnificence of the human soul, to remind myself of that in periods where I'm feeling down, I do find helpful, and considering myself on that scale and the cosmic me, the eternal me, as opposed to this little physical me.
Thank you. Emmeline, would you like to give us a final farewell before we say goodbye?
Should we just take one conscious breath together? Yeah, eyes closed, and a long, steady, peaceful inhale. exhale. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Darren, you outdid yourself this time. This is the best group